Hello, my name is Nigel Griffiths. I work in the Advanced Technology Centre in the UK, part of IBM Europe. In this movie we're going to be looking at workload partitions and in particular static mobility, or relocate, when we actually come to do it. To have this feature we've got to have the newer version of the workload partitions that came out in November 2008. As we said in the faster relocation movie, we've got to have AIX 6.1 Technology Level 2, I recommend Service Pack 3 or above. And we got to have the newer Workload Partitions Manager version 1.2 set up on our machines and the newer agents that come with that. Now there are some workload partitions applications that don't, how should we say it, enjoy NFS. Either they're doing something peculiar with their disks and we don't want to use a network mounted file system to do that I/O, or the vendor perhaps doesn't certify the application for use with NFS. I mean, NFS has only been out for what is it now, 30 years or something, and haven't caught up with that. But either way, perhaps we're running a workload partition on the local disks in the global copy of AIX. So how can we possibly move this application from one source global copy of AIX to another machine? Well, if we stopped the workload partition, then we have it defined and the local disks on that machine. Then perhaps we can use an NFS server to do a backup of that workload partition. Now, the default workload partition, if it hasn't got any large applications and data in it, is actually very small. We're talking about 60 megabytes or so. Of course, if you have lots of data or lots of binaries for your application, that does make it bigger. But I'm going to use that's a scratchpad part of NFS to do the backup. We're not going to run on NFS, we're just using it as a transport mechanism to get to the other machine. Then we can connect that scratch file system to our target machine, and then we can run the workload partition restore and build the same disks in the target machine as we had on the source machine, and we have our workload partition in defined state. Now we can start up that partition and get it running on its, again, local disks. Now if that works, that's all very well. Now if it fails for some reason, we still have the defined workload partition on the source machine and its local disk, so we could just start it up. But if it works, then all we have to do is dismantle the bits and pieces that we had, and now we have our workload partition running on a different machine, even though it's using local disks. Now we already have the capability to do this manually. We have the commands to do backups and restores, and we could create the same workload partition on another machine, provided the original is not running, and then we could activate it. That is somewhat error prone, and that will take a lot longer. Now with the newer version of Workload Partition Manager, we have a single button to do all this, automated and quicker than we can do manually. Okay, so here we are. We've just logged back on to the Workload Partition Manager 1.2, and I have a workload partition here, WPO2. You'll see it's not checkpoint enabled, it's on local disks. If we click on the name, we'll get the properties up. This is a description local disk. If we look at file systems, here we go. We got the read-only shared versions of opt and user, and the other file systems are JFS2 on the local disks themselves. Now I'll quit out of there and I'll select that partition and we'll go for relocation. Now I'll slide down here. You can see that we can't do live application mobility because we're not having the files on NFS mounted file systems. They're local to the global copy of AIX. So we can go for static here. The default location for this shared area is very difficult to understand, to be quite honest. I'm going to use my Scratch file system. And it's recommending Gold LPAR 2. I want to choose. I'm going to go for Red 8. And now I'm going to click OK. It's gone to transitional, so something's happening, and we can track the task by looking at task details. So a whole load of things have happened already. The first thing it's going to do is stop the workload partition. That will take roughly a minute or so. I'll cut 45 seconds of the movie out here to stop you getting bored, and then we'll carry on. Okay, I'll scroll down again, and we're now doing the backup to that Scratch file system. I have had to make that Scratch file system available on both the source and the target machine. I'm actually using the same NFS server as I do with my workload partitions, but it could be a completely different machine if I wanted. Okay, it didn't take very long. It's not very big. This is a small workload partition, and the file size isn't very big. We're not saving a complete copy of AIX, just the files in the file systems of the workload partition. So we're not saving everything that's in /user and /opt, which can be roughly sort of 2 gigabytes for a standard AIX. And I'll cut out 100 seconds here where we wait for the restore of the WPAR. Okay, the restore's complete, and we're starting it up on the target. That worked alright, and now we're removing the backup and the old workload partition, and we're completed. We can see here that took roughly 4 minutes to complete. That's pretty quick. Okay, it's only a small workload partition, but it's a lot more accurate than we could do if we were typing in half a dozen commands to 2 different servers to get it done manually. A nice little feature that will save us a great deal of time, even if we're not using NFS mounted file systems in workload partitions. Don't forget, the place to go for more information is the new Workload Partition Management Red Book. Don't forget that there's 2 out there. You want to look at the newer one. It has AIX 6.1 TL2 mentioned on the front cover.